Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Curious is Better podcast. I'm Craig Lamb at Invative. Today we have Brian Oxley from Vector Global Logistics. Thanks for joining, Brian. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
I want to jump right in. Why don't you give us the origin story of you and your company, how you got where we are today?
All right, that sounds great. Well, Vector Global Logistics, we are a global freight forwarding company started in 2009. My origin story, I was born and raised in the beautiful world of Nebraska. Went to university there, studied biology and biochemistry. Took a few turns, did some work for Accenture, did some work at the Boston Consulting Group, and then ultimately landed in starting Vector Global, like I said, in 2009. It's been, when we started it, it's been a long road. There's been obviously a lot of changes when it comes to freight in general, the freight world with ups and downs through Hanjin going bankrupt to COVID to the Red Sea challenges, et cetera. But now, obviously, the forefront of everybody's mind is what's happening with the Trump tariffs and how is that massively impacting our business
Yeah, sure.
as an importer. But so we founded the company. It was myself and my business partner Enrique Alvarez, and we've been growing. It started in Atlanta, and now we're in 6 different countries with individual presence, with our own employees in another 7 countries, and partners in every country around the world. So
it's awesome. Time flies, right?
Yeah, it is amazing.
Yeah. So with our experience with our clients in logistics, it's highly precise, right? There's not a lot of room for error. So I
Yep.
imagine that you, and I know that you guys are a tech forward company. So can you talk about some of the things that you've implemented from TMS to maybe some custom tools or anything else that you've used?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started the company, we wanted to put a focus on tech, focus on innovation, how to push things forward, right? Because when it comes to the freight forwarding industry, it is so detailed, right? And sending documents at the wrong time can lead to thousands and thousands of dollars of potential mistakes, right? And so when we started the company, we partnered with Logiware as our company, our TMS provider, and building out our own system. And so within the freight forwarding industry, there's a lot of handoffs, as you can imagine, right? Moving from product from a factory over in China through the Shanghai port across the Pacific into LA, moving it through the port, registering everything with customs, and getting everything put on the rail and ultimately delivered to somebody's door. And with all these movements, it's very easy. And the reason why we got into the industry is that people, freight forwarders in general, would not take a lot of the responsibility and accountability if there was a breakdown in the chain, and just threw their hands up and said, well, it's not really our fault. It's customs not moving fast enough, or the port not alerting them that containers are sitting in the port, incurring demurrage. And so for us, our approach was, how do we make sure that we are always accountable and responsible for the freight that we're moving, and making sure that we eliminate all these additional charges or additional issues that come up, right? Because the old adage in the freight forwarding industry is, if you don't have problems, you're just not moving enough freight.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, it was, how do we create a system? Yeah. And again, going back to 2009, it was first focusing on, how do you have these handoffs within our organization as you move something from lead gen over to sales, over to operations, over to administration, to pay all the suppliers and invoice all the clients, and then get your files closed, as you will, with your shipments. And with all these handoffs, we wanted to make sure that within our organization, everybody had their own accountability within the world that they were handling, right? And because it's easy to say when something moves from sales to operations that, well, sales didn't give me the full story of how something should have moved. And ultimately, it comes down to making sure that whatever we do, from inside our company to working with our clients, we want our clients to be delighted, right? And so for us, it's a matter of making sure that everything moves smoothly on our side, so that freight gets to where it needs to go when it needs to be there, and there aren't any additional charges or unforeseen issues that we didn't know about that we could have intercepted and handled, if that makes sense.
Well, it's not uncommon to have a TMS, right? That industry standard, but you said you built outside of that. You built a layer on top of that on your own.
Yep.
That is exceptional. So were you trying to handle edge processes or stuff that makes a differentiator for Vector? It's like, we do it differently. So this TMS or SaaS is not going to suit us.
Yep. Yeah, so it was all about how do we do it different? How do we make sure that as things come up, you have the humanistic side, but then also you have the checks and balances from the system standpoint to say
Sure.
that, hey, all right, you have a container that's been sitting in the port for 4 days. You have 5 free days within the contracts that you have with the steamship lines. You need to make sure you get that container pulled within the next day, right? Otherwise, you're going to be hit with, call it $300 or $400 a day in demurrage as that container is sitting in the port. And same thing when it comes to air operations too, right? You bring an air shipment in, it may get placed on a different aircraft based on capacity, and it may come in early, and you want to make sure that you're aware of this, right? And so it's easy if you have one person focusing on one shipment, but obviously that's not the case. You have one person focusing on many shipments, always juggling things. If an issue comes up over here, it's taking their time away from looking at this. And we needed that overlayer, that edge process within our system to make sure that it's catching everything that we're not actually able to see, right? Or at least that person that's operating is able to see.
Brian, I'd love to hear the story because this is, I have this conversation a lot. It's when you have to go pick an engineering partner and then you know everything you need to know about logistics, but maybe you don't know everything there is to know about software engineering or software creation and implementation. How
Yep.
did you go about vetting and picking the right partner for a vector?
Yeah, good question. For us, I'm not an engineer. I did work at Accenture for a few years, right? So
Helps, right?
it definitely helps. It's a little bit more than saying that I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
That's
But
right.
no, but it's
Tech adjacent because you had to sell
yeah.
services and you knew what they looked like.
Yeah. So I can speak a lot of the lingo. I don't know a ton about the inner workings of how things need to be matched up, right? I can understand, okay, we need to do this, put it into a test environment, move the test environment over to production and do a lot of that stuff. But for us, when it went to evaluating a lot of different partners, when we looked at the whole gamut, there were some great players out there, right, that had really great systems. And Lodgeware wasn't the biggest. They had a number of clients. Econo Creed was, I think, one of their clients at the time, and they were an LCL consolidator. And in meeting with their founders, really they had a good understanding of where we were, what the industry was sitting at within the system that they had put, and they knew that we could add value in terms of where we wanted to go with building all the processes and the intelligence within the system. And we shared a common vision, right? And in picking our partner, we looked at them and thought that they would do a great job listening to what we need and build it. And on the flip side, I think they really understood and valued our opinion of what we wanted to try and do. So, and as a result, what was rolled out was, they would have a bunch of different clients that were running on different platforms, and the stuff that we would put in, they would actually migrate into other clients' platforms that they were working on. So,
Yeah, so starting that relationship was just as simple as talking and listening.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. And then you establish some level of confidence that they could do what they said they were going to do.
Yep. Yep.
You know what? You opened with this and it caught my attention. We were talking about tariffs. So like you had mentioned tariffs. But I'm curious how you see the world as far as maybe predictions and some technologies and how they're going to be implemented across logistics. I'm having conversations where I see AI.
Yep.
I'd like to hear your opinions on that and where you see where AI can not only handle process automations as simple as a container has to go today or in the next handful of hours and can submit the request automatically to maybe political environment monitoring and things like that.
Yeah. So, and before I jump into that, it's interesting how things have moved over the past 16 years within the industry and technology. So, where we started in 2009, you look back and it's relatively rudimentary, right? And should be relatively basic. Then you went to the next
comparison for sure.
Yeah. And then you moved into the next phase where it was more around, a more accurate track and trace. What can you do from predictive modeling to say that, all right, I know that we have the dry season coming up in the Panama. And so with looking at historical data along with future weather trends, what do we think that the Panama is going to do when it comes to limiting traffic through the Panama to get to the East Coast? And then now we're in this phase of, to your point, AI. And the hot topic right now is you have all these changes that are coming down the pipeline when it comes to the Trump tariffs, right? You have, looking at AI from not our business, but from our clients' businesses, trying to understand what are these tariff changes going to do and what's the impact going to be, and using predictive models to try and take out how is this going to impact my overall business? What do I have to do from a pricing standpoint for my clients, because people can't shoulder 125% increase in their cost of goods, right? And
Yeah.
so for us,
You have to forecast. You have
yeah,
to do
that's
business.
exactly right. And so for us, we've been working with AI, with our software vendor on the custom side of things, to really work on pushing information in to learn everything, to make sure that things are accurately coded for every for every product that's coming in when it comes to that tariff code. And it's become, and AI is going to be a game changer when it comes to this, because it is becoming so complex when it comes to the tariff schedules of bringing product in. And as the courts work through things, there may or may not be rebates coming back to the importers down the road. So as you stand today, or sorry, as you stood 5 years ago, you would, well, I guess before Trump's term, you would import, let's say, a lamp, and that lamp would have one HS code. That one HS code would have one duty rate, and that was it, right? And it was easy. However, now you're in this era of, you have all these additional tariffs that are stacking onto each other. So if I'm importing, let's say, a metal table, it can be listed on, you have the base duty rate that you pay for that HS code for that product. It could be on the 301 tariff list, which was from Trump's first term. That could be somewhere between 7.5% and 25%. You then have fentanyl, which could be another 20%. And then it could be the either or of the reciprocal tariff of currently 10%, or you could have the steel and aluminum, which was 25, becomes 50. And so now you have all these different iterations, all these different HS codes for one single product. And if you're bringing in a shipment, you may have 100 products in those containers, right? And so making sure that you're using AI to capture all the rates, all the codes correctly is critical. But then on the flip side, we have in the court system that it was ruled that anything that Trump had declared a national emergency to use a tariff increase was overextending his authority, right? Which then there was an appeal, and they're currently at a stay. But you look at, as we move forward, and you have hundreds of thousands of shipments that are coming in every day that are clearing freight. If customs goes, if the courts ultimately rule and say anything for the IEPA tariffs, right, or the emergency tariffs are not allowable for him to increase, and it's only Congress that can do it, they're going to have to go back and identify which shipments with that specific line item.
Even retro
What's that?
Even retro, right? Like to
retro. Yep. To go back and say, you paid this, and it was a large amount, even when the 125%, that would be a kicked out. And that's an enormous amount, but you need the technology and the AI to go back and say, well, the 301 tariff that was paid. So you have a shipment that may have 100 products, and you look at, of the 100 products, that you would say, well, if IEPA should be, look back retroactive, the IEPA should be null and void. So you should get that money back, but everything else is okay. So you'd say, well, the 301 rate is okay. Your duty rate's okay. The fentanyl is, should get refunded. If there's a reciprocal tariff, it would get refunded. And the way it works, it's either or reciprocal or steel and aluminum. But, if there would be a thing where you'd say the fentanyl would get refunded, but the steel and aluminum, that's under a different classification as to why the tariffs went up, that you would not get a refund on that, right? So
you can all this data, and you have all this in your head, right? These dynamic variables, because they come at you. Do you feel like AI fills in those technical gaps across like standard systems? And does it get you excited, or does it get you worried? Is there any concern as far as like, because there's so many variables and they're so conditional, right? Yeah. And then there's implications on the condition of like, what's called like in the Boolean, if this, then that,
yep.
Then that, yep. Right? In some never-ending tree. Right? So,
you have your if-then statement that's 100 statements long, right?
That's right. That's right.
No, it gets me excited, right? Because it allows you to go in and identify this data, right? And I think that if you look at AI in general, as a side note, we have a lot of clients that come to us and say, well, look, these tariffs are killing us. What do you think about getting having our commercial invoice values reduced, or what do we think about doing X, Y, or Z? And our response unequivocally is customs and the FDA are so overwhelmed because Trump will say that it has this change and they'll want to make another, and then you have to interpret that change, and then whether or not that change officially takes place or not, it may happen or not, but and the customs is trying to keep up with all this. So they're understaffed right now. But with AI, they're going to be able to go back and look at all this data to say, well, you were importing it at, say, this value. Now it's at this value under these shipments. I think AI is going to be so powerful that customs will be able to come back at a later date and say, well, I know you imported this thing a year ago. We noticed this anomaly where you were now 35% lower than what you're importing it. We need data behind it to substantiate your claim as to why you brought it in at that rate. And so for us, it's advising our clients that
probably creates a little bit of a cloud of concern, right? Because there's such a culture, decades long, of federal government's inefficiencies in process implementation and adoption of, like, let's call it standards, current standards or whatever.
Yeah.
But if they do get out of their own way, they do start implementing some of these proven models from the private sector that they can now implement in the federal government sector, where they can catch up pretty quickly and pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
What the implications of that are going to be across, like, their historic, like you said, historical orders. But overall, I think it's probably a good thing, and it probably creates a lot of opportunity for, I'm going to say, like, I'm speaking out of turn, but the federal government like rarely forgives, right? They're going to see what they can get, but at least the information will be current.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And for us, as I mentioned, we're really excited about it because if my team has an entry that they have to go back and look at, right? It's a single shipment for a single client that may have 100 products that they have to go through. And if they'd have to reevaluate, that would take my team 3 hours to go through and tick everything off, then have to go and take that information and refile it with customs to try and get that rebate down the road should that happen. Where if you're, using AI, you're going to be able to do that it'll take 10 seconds, right? And for me, from running my company, I want to make sure that all my employees and my staff are 100% focused on being efficient. And to me, their time is better spent doing something else, even though the amount of money that's going to be refunded is massive. Using AI to be able to catch that and to be able to push stuff through it's going to be great for us.
Yeah.
So
I want to stay in touch with you on your implementation of your AI, because we have some client, we've gotten involved in projects that we actually had to fix because we took these models that were supposed to be industry models or academic models, and they didn't, teach them their data. And you said that you're doing a lot of ingestion and testing and iteration now. And it takes a little bit of time, right? Because you have to make sure that you're not just doing it fast, you're doing it correctly. So then it can do it fast and correctly.
That's exactly right.
Fast and wrong. So I have to keep up with, I'm going to keep up with you on that. I have one last question for you, kind of like just out of the blue. If you had unlimited resources, what project would you take on to introduce to your company or your industry? Like, if that would be technology based.
Yeah. So if unlimited resources, there's a lot of people. I would want to create a true end-to-end solution, right? With the AI overlay, because there's a lot of vendors out there from a software perspective that they do this. The TMS is great, right? Yep. But then you have to have the overlay when it comes to data management and contract management and whatnot, right? And then you have companies that do great track and trace. Then you have great companies that do the customs, but
the ends there, right?
Yeah. And so you're doing a lot of stops and starts. So if I had an unlimited budget to be able to create a world-class platform that does everything from end to end would be fantastic. So
yeah, I didn't ask this before, but like right now too, is that there's probably a pretty big space for you guys and people in logistics for integration, right, between those systems.
Yeah,
that happens a lot.
Yeah, and integration it's tough, right? We have a SaaS platform that we've been working on from a track and trace that is fantastic, and everything within, providing the links to their platform through our system to their platform is great, but getting the information to fully link up to pass data back and forth.
Well, there's not always one to one. There's not always a one-to-one. There's not always a key that you can count on that will reference back. So it does get complicated. So I appreciate the amount of effort that takes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, Brian, thanks for joining. This was super, super interesting. And I'm going to keep in touch with you to follow you on your AI track.
That would be
Thank
fantastic.
you for joining.
No. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation, and obviously looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot.